Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm TWB. Well, attention all Newsweek subscribers. I'm talking to you. It looks like it's the end of an era. On Thursday, Newsweek announced that it will terminate its print edition at year-end and go 100% digital. Take a look.
Newsweek will end its print publication after 80 years. It will shift to an all-digital format in early 2013. Its last U.S. print edition will be its December 31st issue.
The problem is it's news. It's available every day, 24 hours a day around the world. And unless they have a different take or some brilliant insight, I don't think the public's going to wait a week to get a story.
Newsweek saw diminishing print ad revenue, a drop in circulation, and the migration of readers to free news online.
The news magazines, I think, are in permanent trouble. And I figured, in a year or two or three, they'd either be gone or have to do what this guy's doing. It just seems to have accelerated the process.
The announcement of the change was made by Tina Brown, editor-in-chief, and Baba Shetty, its CEO. Job cuts are expected, and the stories will get shorter.
You're not going to get a two-page story with the second half on page 8 anymore. So maybe they don't need all the content providers that they used to. They may go a different route.
Newsweek isn't the first to drop its print product. U.S. News and World Report dropped its weekly print edition years ago.
Okay, now keep in mind, Newsweek's closing will impact nearly 1.4 million Newsweek subscribers who get their copy each week in the mail. A couple stats, guys, before we get into it, in terms of digital magazine subscriptions. During the 6-month period, January to June of 2012, the number of digital editions more than doubled compared to the previous year, from 2 million to 5.5 million. That's a huge stat, according to the Audit Bureau of Circulations, if you're curious. I'm not making this stuff up. Over the next 8 years, magazines will undergo an even bigger change, digital editions edging out print by 2020. Single copy sales at newsstands are down by almost 10%. First things first, how do you guys prefer to read, digitally or tangibly in your hands? WJ?
Well, I
don't know.
I do miss the warm and fuzzy feeling of kind of curling up with the New York Times, but I'm not going to pay $2 for a daily edition of that paper either. I can go on one of these and I can read actually the top 10 or 20 papers in the world, pay nothing, and do all of that in about 15 minutes. I mean, which one am I going to go with? It's a question, I think, of actually riding the horse in the direction it's going in. And it's going in this direction. Stay on the horse.
Comes down to money. Okay, Francesca, what's your preference?
Well, I think...
Well, you have an iPad sitting next to you, so I think I know the answer.
This is indispensable to my life right now. I bought it when I was reporting in the field, and it was really indispensable to being able to just turn things around really quickly when I was out there doing live shots and things. However, I will also say that as an author whose book is being published this week as we speak...
Plug it, quick.
Yeah,
Plug
Rooted.
it again.
Plug it again.
Okay, Rooted, a first memoir, will be available on Amazon and all kinds
What
of things.
did you say, Rooted?
It's called Rooted.
Okay,
yeah,
got
it's
it.
Rooted. It's a memoir.
Got it.
But
in verse, I'm told.
it is.
In
It
verse.
is. Thank you. Thank you. But the point is that it will be in paper, but it will also have an ebook edition, which was a little bit difficult to get my publisher to do. My idea is simply this. We are moving, I agree with WJ, into the digital age. The Newsweek debacle, however, I think was squarely on Tina Brown's head, and if she wanted to keep it around for a little bit longer, she could have, and she didn't, and she kind of made a mess of it. And Rupert Murdoch made a mess of the Daily, and that didn't work out either. So I think that there are plenty of reputable news organizations out there, like the New York Times, for example, that have a paywall that you do pay for, but you know that it's great content. And I think that my mother was a long-time Newsweek subscriber. She's 72 years old. She kept showing me these Newsweek things. She showed me one last week when she was visiting me in Brooklyn, and she was like, what is this anymore? And lo and behold, it just had lost its way.
Right. James, but has Newsweek alienated part of its readership?
Well, it's so, and I don't know if I agree with Francesca about Tina Brown. I think she's in a tough situation. And I should say I write for the Daily Beast, right? In a tough situation where the purpose of Newsweek initially was to be what the internet kind of is now, something that was a weekly sort of update. With the advent of the internet, the very sort of premise upon which Newsweek was founded really shifted. We don't really need a print weekly sort of news source. Daily still you can make the case, but Newsweek probably became obsolete as soon as iPads became super
but they
pervasive.
could have taken that brand and turned it into something.
They could have, but what happened was that the Daily Beast was doing so well. They had merged or I think they bought the Daily Beast, was doing so well that it just made sense ultimately for them to jettison the sort of print version of Newsweek. But I agree with you, Francesca, that it outlived its purpose, and maybe has outlived its purpose even prior to this.
Is this where we're headed, though, in journalism in general? Is journalism going digital? Ultimately, 10 years from now. I mean,
it is.
But totally digital. I mean, are we never going to be able to pick up anything anymore?
I think it's totally digital for now until we get to the next best thing, and it's out there.
Well, our newsstand's not going to exist. Look at all the newsstands in
Newsstands
Manhattan.
are already in decline. But let me say this:
they're still employing lots of people.
I personally prefer to, especially with magazines, prefer to hold and read a magazine because I love photography and I love to really hold it in my hands. But I'm a dying breed. A lot of folk want to consume that kind of content through some kind of digital interface. And again, it's going to be phones, it's going to be iPads, and the ways that those sales are increasing suggest that the digital platform for news content is here to stay.
If I could say one thing about that, digitally, when I read the Times digitally, I've got to tell you, I do not retain or process the information the same way as I do when I have a physical copy of the paper. You ever had that experience?
It depends on your mind memory.
Well,
I mean, it depends if you're a visual learner and how things are spread out. I mean, I know I am, so go ahead.
The other thing is there's a certain application too. I mean, you can't be sitting on the beach in the middle of summertime and have an iPad with you 24/7 and expect to be reading everything off of that. You know, you need some. Well, because of the glare and other.
That's why they made those special inks where you can actually read them. Even
but guys, let's just move on. It's not just magazines. Let's move on to books. Okay, I mean, e-books are just killing regular books. Barnes and Noble, Borders is bankrupt. Barnes and Noble's on the verge of bankruptcy. Lincoln Center in Manhattan. There's now a Century 21. No, but in general, this is where we're headed. What are obviously the economics? People are losing jobs. But where are we headed in terms of learning?
Let me actually, as an educator, let me put it out to you this way. If you had a choice between a 7th grader with 30 pounds of books on his back, going home to study, to do his homework that night, versus having a Kindle that's loaded up with all of his textbooks and maybe another 100 novels or 200 novels as well, and taking that little half-pound device home with him, which one would you choose? One is 65 bucks. There are millions and millions of titles out there that are absolutely free. There's a lot
but what about the social aspects? I mean, fine, so you're putting a book there, but now kids can't go to a Barnes and Noble. There's socialization. There's the
what's
feel
so great
of
about a Barnes and Noble?
But just in general, libraries. I mean, libraries in general. Bookstores in general are closing. It kills me that bookstores are hard to find now.
One of the reasons why bookstores are closing down, though, is not just because of the digitization piece of it. It's also because Amazon sells a lot of books. And people consume things a little bit differently.
So in general,
because they're marketing digitally.
And
also part of the
Amazon
system.
sells hard books as well. Amazon sells traditional books as well, a lot more. And I mean, they're basically are putting those places
and they're
out
selling
of
them digitally.
They're selling them digitally as well.
And I also think, look, I mean, as like I said, I'm publishing my first book this week. Okay, so this is just in my mind right now. There are small independent bookstores that are more inclined to buy certain types of books too. So I'm writing a verse memoir. That's going to be a good book. Whereas other kinds of things that are a little bit more topical, a little bit more of like a dating book or something like that, you may be able to get that online and not really care so much about having it as a hard copy that you're going to want to hold on to for years to come. It's a little bit more flash in the pan.
But go ahead.
Educationally, as far as getting back to that, obviously it's an affordability factor, and it's whether or not people can get up to speed in these school districts, as we've been talking about. Can we get iPads or Kindles or tablets of whatever sort?
Florida, by the way, is almost entirely digitized at this point. Florida public
I have
schools.
to say, I tutor a lot of kids, and it is amazing to me how they're being taught versus the way I had an education. I had notebooks. I took notes. All these kids, they have these public coursework on the web. They don't take any notes in class. It's all given to them. I mean, there's so many levels to this discussion. I mean, they don't learn a thing in class because they don't have to write it. Everything's already done for them. They don't remember anything. I mean, handwriting's become obsolete. They can't even write a note because, I mean, there's so many levels here. So I just think this e-textbook, I don't agree with it. I don't like it, WJ. I know you said it makes sense economically.
A better place. Maybe this is like a faith moment in education where we have to trust the fact things are changing. Whether or not we like them, things are changing. I'm on board. I have a
you don't think it's, come on, it's not dumbing us down in any capacity.
Out there as well. I'm ready for it.
You would say it's not dumbing us down.
It doesn't have to.
I'm not so sure.
It doesn't have to.
But it is.
It doesn't have to. I mean, technology does not have to be used as a shortcut, although you're right. Some students do use it.
I think kids are lazy
students in my class still take notes. notes. Students in my classes
I'm happy to hear that.
Are still taking notes. I think the thing is and WJ is on something here, is we're in transition. And to a certain extent, we do have to go with this transition, because one thing that's also different about young people today is they're different kinds of learners. They're visual learners, they're audio learners. I mean, they learn in different ways because of the ways in which technology has changed our society.
And
so we can't stay in the same 20th century.
We have to be responsible for creating these kind of watering hole kind of experiences, libraries, bookstores, cafes, the kinds of things that actually bring people together. We can't all do it by interacting with digital data on an iPad. We'll go crazy. We've got to have those moments to interact, and that's part of the responsibility of education. We've got to create new ways of having teachers, students and students interacting with one another in real time, in the moment. That's an enhancing, very, very vital part of learning.
You should still be able to talk about books whether they're on your phone or in your hand as a physical copy.
It's just a different way of learning. I grew up hanging out at the library, going to a Borders. I mean, that's where we had a lot of our meetings. And it's just, I mean, browsing, looking around, socialization, it's something that this generation is missing out on. And I don't think there's an advent to it.
We can still have those spaces, though. I think we should. I think that the challenge is to create those spaces, internet cafes, places like Starbucks or wherever.
Until Century 21 comes in and takes out your local bookstore.
Right.
Well, they just erected a new bookstore in Fort Greene in Brooklyn called Greenlight Bookstore. There were two women that came together that said, you know, we want to do this, and you know, the local community said we want a local independent bookstore here, and so they just erected one. So there is, even within this, you know, midst of this craziness, there is a resurgence, if you will, and a desire. I think it's the critical mass, it's the population. What do people really want? So I don't really think the jury's out, you know, on this. I think that we'll continue to see people doing a little bit of both and integrating some of this and some of that.
What about the digital divide, though? What about low-income families who can't afford this e-lifestyle?
You've got $100 laptops going out to the third world. That could become 25 to 35 bucks at Kmart and Walmart when we start marketing them in this country. And not to mention phones.
Smartphones are closing the digital
everybody's
divide.
internet
Smartphones
now.
have been
Come
closing
on.
the digital divide.
Even kids robbing the people on the D train, you know, after school. I've got those two.
Our smartphones D-train. I don't want to talk about the subway. That's but I mean, smartphones, do they make us smarter?
I don't know about
I'm not so sure. I mean, it really is an interesting, it's an oxymoron.
It's a tool, it's how you use it. It's a tool, it depends on how you use it.
If you're accessing information and you're using it to garner information and to ingest information, that's, you know, that's one thing. I mean, I think it's great if you're a scanner and you're using it to scan 4 pieces of information. It's another thing if you're really looking for long-term absorption. See one, do one, teach one. That's a very old school methodology in terms of actually having ownership of information. And I think that when you use digital technology to ingest whatever it is that your information is, there's fewer opportunities to do that model of see one, do one, teach one. So you become more of a passive learner than you would if you were actually picking up a book, circling notes, Xeroxing, writing things out on index cards, and things like you and I used to do.
Everyone, but the bottom line is it has, you know, more people are reading more than ever. I mean, so the good thing is maybe
Harry
even
Potter, look at all this.
Exactly.
That's right.
So you guys, that's
Who'd have
it.
thought it?
Do you have anything else to say?
Buy my book.
Well, we can't
Can't wait for next week.
Okay, we can't wait for next week. Thanks, you guys.
And the
terrific
debate
panel.
on Monday.
Yes, and the third and final debate. Looking forward to that. We are out of time. Once again, I'd like to thank our all-star panel for their fresh outlooks, James, William, and Francesca. If you have a fresh outlook, of course, we want to hear about it. All you got to do is let us know on Facebook. Go to our Twitter site, @AbrewTV. I'm TWB in the Twitterverse. That's @TWBrill. Hope this is all making sense. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Fresh Outlook. Have a good day.